Good evening, listeners, brave navigators of the enigmatic and the concealed. Have you ever felt the pull of the unanswered, the allure of the mysteries that shroud our existence? For more than a decade, a unique comic publisher has dared to dive into these mysteries, unafraid of the secrets they might uncover. This audacious entity is Paranoid American. Welcome to the mystifying universe of the Paranoid American podcast.
Launched in the year 2012, Paranoid American has been on a mission to decipher the encrypted secrets of our world. From the unnerving enigma of MK Ultra mind control to the clandestine assemblies of secret societies. From the awe-inspiring frontiers of forbidden technology to the arcane patterns of occult symbols in our very own pop culture. They have committed to unveiling the concealed realities that lie just beneath the surface. Join us as we navigate these intricate landscapes, decoding the hidden scripts of our society and challenging the accepted perceptions of reality.
Folks, I've got a big problem on my hands. There's a company called Paranoid American making all these funny memes and comics. Now, I'm a fair guy. I believe in free speech, as long as it doesn't cross the line. And if these AI-generated memes dare to make fun of me, they're crossing the line.
This is your expedition into the realm of the extraordinary, the secret, the shrouded. Come with us as we sift through the world's grand mysteries, question the standardized narratives, and brave the cryptic labyrinth of the concealed truth. So strap yourselves in, broaden your horizons, and steel yourselves for a voyage into the enigmatic heart of the Paranoid American podcast, where each story, every image, every revelation brings us one step closer to the elusive truth.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in again. This is another episode of the Paranoid American podcast, and I'm excited about this episode. One of the main reasons that I even do a podcast is really just to give me a chance to talk with people in long format and just kind of like poke and prod and figure out their thoughts and their experiences. And I've got an incredibly unique guest today, and I want to give warm welcome to Penny Shepard from Awake Nation podcast. So welcome aboard, Penny.
Thank you.
Here we go.
How are you?
I'm doing great. Hope you're having a great weekend. Here you had some crazy puppy experiences this morning.
Did. And as soon as I got on this podcast, I texted my sister, and of course she just now called me. So I left her a message and said, "Sorry, I'm on a podcast. I can't talk to you." Yes, a very weird. But one of the weird things is that my name is Penny L.A. Shepard, but I found out at 58 that I was involved in MK Ultra Project, Project Genesis, Subproject Eve, which is a cloning project, and I was also involved in time travel projects. So I have some issues with time travel. For instance, I always wear a watch. It has the day and the date on it. If my watch stops, people get upset because I'm like, "Oh my God, my watch stopped," and they know what that means. And weird things happen when my watches stop. So I have like 2 or 3. These are cheap watches, really cheap, but I keep a battery in them. And if something happens, I put on another one immediately because I've lost a lot of time in my life. So you and I were talking before we came on air about an unusual thing. The Awake Nation is on Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11. We just changed our hours, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. to 12 Eastern time. And so we just changed our entire format, and we just garnered a very valued host. It's mypillow.com. Okay. So
congrats. That's big. Right? That's huge.
Mike Lindell. All right. So what happened to me was I started doing laundry, and I decided to wash my pillows because my partner, David Zubik, reminded me because of My Pillow. We keep doing the commercials for My Pillow. I'm like, you know what? I could use a My Pillow, but I said, my pillows are flat. I need to wash them. So I washed them, and then I put them in the dryer. By the way, my name is Shepard, not Shep Hard. I am kind of hard sometimes, but
no one else will see that.
Okay. So, well, my ex-husband spelled my name that way, so that's weird, right? So anyway, I put the pillows in the dryer, and then I went out into the dryer, and I emptied everything out, and I only got one pillow back. And I was like, this is weird. I looked in the washer. There was no pillow in the washer. So I slept the night. I went into town. I put my blankets and my rugs in the dryer. There was nothing in the washer. I put the rugs in there. When I came back from town, that pillow was in the dryer. So it kind of freaked me out because this is how time portals work also, where something will appear, disappear, and appear. It's very strange. Now you could say, all right, Penny, you were just blind. You didn't see it. But I'm telling you, there was nothing in the washer. I put my hand in the washer. There was nothing in the washer. And there was nothing in the dryer. I put my hand in the dryer. It was empty. So what happened? How did that pillow just appear? And I've also had that happen with shoes, where a shoe disappeared, and I bought the same shoes from being on stage. You get used to wearing the same shoes, and so I had like 5 pairs of these same shoes. They were Payless shoes, and when I was put in the crazy house because I was declared enemy of the state, one I put this pair under my bed. Now I had like I was missing one shoe, not a red shoe. There were black patents. I was missing one shoe.
Let's cut that right off in the bud before anyone makes an assumption.
Not one red shoe. And I looked under my bed and I was missing one shoe. I put both shoes under the bed. So now I had the shoe that I was missing. I now had the opposite shoe. And now I have a pair where I had 4.5. Now I have a pair 4 because the shoe that was taken was the opposite shoe that was under my bed. And I freaked out about that for a while because no one came in my room and said, I have to have these shoes. And if they did, because they were cross-dressing or whatever, they wouldn't walk away with one shoe. Okay. And there's no way I would have woken up. You know what I'm saying?
Where do you think it goes? Like in that temporal moment and it disappears? Is it in like another dimension? Is it just invisible?
Like possibly it's in another dimension. But this pillow came back. So I'm befuddled. And the reason why I'm befuddled is because so much is going on in the world today. And when I found out that I was MK Ultra, I started researching everything. And I started researching my background. I'm an entertainer by trade, a singer. And Tom Altos and I have much in common in this respect. And so when I first found out I was MK Ultra, I started researching. I started trying to find out why I had no memories. I literally did not have memories of like my relationships. I mean, I know I was married, but I didn't remember anything that occurred in that marriage. So I literally got erased, and they took all my pictures from me. So every time I left a relationship, the pictures were taken. So
what was it that you came across that made you realize that you were basically part of MK Ultra at some point?
Well, I first started with a question about, I found out from my first husband, Steve Zenos, that my former agent, John, who I had an affair with in the 90s, he told me he was my biological brother. So I was so upset at the time that I didn't really have a chance to actually ask him more questions because I was just pissed. So you just heard a litany of like swear words coming out of me because I was like, I couldn't believe that. He said, well, you didn't know. I said, but you did, didn't you?
Was it true?
Yes. Everyone knew. He told me because I started looking at my former agent and I saw that he had bomb gardeners in his family. Now, why is that significant? Because I asked my sister at one point in our life, who had left when I was like 10 or 12, and she went and lived with my grandmother in North Carolina. And my sister said, no, we don't have any bomb gardeners in the family. When my dad died, who I refer to as my fake dad, when he died, I looked and I was like, is that grandma? Because it says bomb gardener on her tombstone. And you said we didn't have any bomb gardeners in the family. And she just like, oh, whatever. So then when I see that my agent has bomb gardeners in the family, I say, well, we're related through the bomb gardener name, but we're not, blood related, but we're clan related through that bomb gardener name. The Bowmans married the Gartners, and then they became the Baumgartners, right? They amalgamated the names. And the Bowmans are actually the men of the bow, and those are the Rothschilds. Okay, so Bauman, Boe, Bauer is a Bowman. men of the bow are they're from the Rothschild lineage. So when I initially had said that, he's my former agent, now that I know is my brother, responded, well, not all Baumgartners are related. And the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. And that's when I know he's, epically lying. And I said, well, no, we're not. They're not blood related, but they are all related. Then I said, I see you now, but I didn't really see then who he actually was. So then I started researching. That was the first thing that started me researching, was that connection. Then I found out more about who he represented. A lot of very high profile names were on his client list, like Madonna, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Kanye West, Taylor Swift.
Is it just a talent agent? Like, what kind of agent is this?
Well, he's an agent, a manager, a producer, and a director. Okay, so he's been doing this for almost 50 years. And I never say what his last name is, because he's been enmeshed in the entertainment industry forever, plus very, very high political ties that go to the White House. So when I started asking questions, that was a problem. I became declared enemy of the state. My husband, I was married 2 times. My second husband looked like David Duchovny, which when I questioned him in the 90s, I didn't get an answer on that. I was like, why do you look like David Duchovny? Why does Gillian Anderson look like me? And no response. Now I'm heavier, now, but still, Gillian Anderson looked a lot like me. And I was born August 11th, 1958. She was born August 9th, 1968. So she is a Leo. She was born in Illinois, but she was schooled in London. So, hence she has more of a London, London upbringing. And when you're raised in London, it really is a different society. So you have different, not different mores, but like different inflections and different ways that you talk about things. I'm not sure if she actually has an accent or not, but she spent a lot of time in Chicago. And I don't know if she went back there after being educated in London. Anyway, the point of the matter was that he told me when I left him, my second husband was Sam Van Hooser, and he was a police officer, retired, a sergeant with Carlsbad PD. And his dad was a deputy sheriff in Santee. He was also a historian for the Deputy Sheriff Society in San Diego, and helped build the Old Town Sheriff's Historical Museum.
When you say Carlsbad, is this like Carlsbad Caverns area?
No, this is Carlsbad. This is Carlsbad, San Diego. Now, here's an interesting thing. When I left my husband and I was made homeless, I got arrested, I got thrown in a crazy house, all the things he told me would happen. And then when I finally settled in Texas, and I had to get my driver's license, I had to get my birth certificates, etc. And I wanted to find out what his badge number was. So I called the Carlsbad Police Department. I said, I want to talk to the chief of police. And they said, well, he's unavailable. And and then when I started saying some things, the lady was like, oh, you shouldn't say stuff like that. And I'm like, well, I'm a truth teller. So all I want is my husband's badge number. She says, well, we can't give that to you. I'm like, really? I was married to him for 21 years and with him for 5 years before that. But as married, and now a widow, I cannot get his badge number. She said, no. So when I went to go look for the name of because now I want to talk to the chief of police. So I went to go look for the name of the chief of police. Now, Sam died January 6, 2018. 3 months later, there was a chief of police in Carlsbad, New Mexico, right? Which the surrounding area is Roswell. And his name is Skinner. Okay? Wait, you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
So I was so upset when I went to Google it. I was like, F me, Skinner. And so I said, now I have to go to a chief of police because I thought that was Carlsbad, San Diego. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And he looked like Mitch Pileggi. And I was like, so now I have to literally go to a police chief named, and I wrote an email. I said, I literally have to go to a police chief named Skinner. And she's like, we don't have a police chief named Skinner here. And I was like, oh man. And then I looked back and it was the wrong Carlsbad. But if you draw a geo map, it's a straight line from Carlsbad, San Diego to Carlsbad, New Mexico. That's weird, right?
That is weird. That I imagine that you probably notice a lot more coincidences than other people just because of your background. And I'm really curious when you said that you got that inkling that you're part of MK Ultra and you started doing research. Where did that research start? Like what would you, if someone else thought that they might have been part of the program and they wanted to research it, like where would you direct them to actually be able to figure it out?
Well, the hardest thing is like finding out your lineage, because now I know that the name, I knew when I was a child, the name that I had was not my actual name. I knew that it was not my name. I didn't like my last name either.
How did you know that? Were you
I
told?
just knew it innately. I knew it. I when I was in third grade, I had my baptismal name and my middle name. And so I put periods between them. So hence Penny L.A. Shepard. And I always always refer to myself. I've signed my name that, forever. Shepard is a second name, but I've always signed my name. And when I was singing at one point, I just went by Penny L.A. And so, when I started researching, it started with my agent. And then my first husband tells me that's my brother. He dies of a heart attack 3 weeks later. But I don't know who I am, right? He knows who John is, meaning that he's known John before he met me, because he was sent to me by my first handler, who was Durrell, who I believe is Albert Speer's illegitimate son. That's Hitler's architect, and also occultist. And so when I start looking at things, I'm asking questions. Who am I, right? And that is the question. And I also prayed and I asked God, reveal myself to me. So that's a great prayer to start with, because in God's timing, he will reveal things in a slow manner in which your head does not explode, because it's so much information. And so I started researching a lineage that people are like, I'm adopted, Penny. How will I know who I am? Right. So I started with the premise that with the Baumgartner name, that much I knew. I don't even know if she's my real grandmother. I don't know if I don't know the inception of my own birth. So I would say start with your name, even the name that was given to you if you're adopted. Start with that, because there are already always reasons for everything. There are no coincidences. For instance, in the 1980s, with my first husband, I lived in Mission Viejo, and I got a white bird. I had a lot of birds, and I had a white bird, and I named the bird Snowden. Now, later on, I was like, that's weird, right? That I named my bird Snowden. And I found out there's a movie called Falcon and the Snowman. And so Falcon and the Snowman is about, the Snowman was a Coke dealer. I think Sean Penn played the Snowman in Falcon and the Snowman. And they were spies. And Falcon was a falconer, and he also worked for TRW. So they sold state secrets to various embassies. And then they were arrested and they were sentenced to 40 years in jail. My husband went to school in Palos Verdes. He went to Rolling Hills, but his parents taught at Palos Verdes High, and there were counselors there, and that's where Falcon and the Snowman were.
So that was based on a true story?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Oh,
yes.
wow.
These guys got 40 years. And one was I think they were both released a little bit early. And the second one, I think, it was very weird because he got released and he went to Oregon, and that's where my brother David was. I think he was still a spy. I think he cut a deal.
You said a second ago that like the information has to kind of come in its own time, otherwise your head will basically just explode.
Yeah, it's too much information, and it will literally give you a heart attack. When I was homeless, and I'd ask God reveal myself to me, and I'm a researcher. I've been a writer since I was a child. I wrote a children's book when I was in 6th grade, which was not published as well. And so, with that temperament, and I'm a truth teller, so people know I'm going to research it to its fruition until I can find some answers. And my brother David was a very good researcher too. David wrote an unpublished book entitled The Whistleblower about Bush, the Vatican, and my family. And he said that his family was orchestrated. There were government plants, which I firmly believe he was telling the absolute truth. And when he got divorced from his wife, he came to San Diego. He was told that he had to leave California. So he left California. He was told, never come back. We will kill you if you come back. And he came back to warn me. He lived at Mission Beach for 2 years with the homeless people. He had a truck. He was arrested over 50 times. My people were in the San Diego policing community. So, there's no way that they didn't know that he'd been arrested all these times. And I think that they orchestrated. I believe his murder was actually an order that was carried out because he came to warn me.
Is his book still available?
No, it is not. It was unpublished. The last copy of his screenplay was taken from me by an agent named Tony in Illinois who knew my first handler, Durrell. So he took my computer, he took my briefcase, which, I'm still pissed about the briefcase because I didn't have any funds and it was a brand new leather briefcase. So I'll be mad at that for, I know it's trite. But.
Are there any copies of the book left?
No.
Nowhere?
No, they're gone. As far as I know, unless his ex-wife has a copy, which she's not talking to anyone. That book was put on the Copyright Office, but in order to get that book, I would have to sue the Copyright Office. I remember pieces of the screenplay, which he sent me because he asked me how to write a screenplay because I'm a writer. He said, you're the writer in the family. How do I write a screenplay? I said, well, it's a little bit different than a book because in a book you can use descriptors, but in a screenplay you can use those descriptors for scenes, which would be directives to location production, but your whole script is predicated upon dialogue, and then you build your character. So, he wrote a screenplay. I had the screenplay, and I had it in a safe. So when I left my husband, I took very few things with me. I took like 4 boxes of clothes, and and those 4 boxes of clothes got stolen too. And I pretty much walked with nothing. I walked without. I had my vehicle, which thank God, because at one point I had to live in that vehicle. And then because I'm a determined individual, I drove back to all the places that I lived before to try and regain the memories that I had, that have been erased from me.
Do you have any other special techniques for regaining memories that have been erased? Like I assume that being in the places, that's like some sort of a trigger or like an anchor, right? Are there any things that you found that also facilitate that?
Oh, most assuredly. So even Kathy O'Brien says that writing is pivotal. So, and as a writer, I just started writing because, that's who I am. And there are things that I wrote that I have not published. I have a blog. It's everything I do is free. It's Shepard, Shepard, the word entertainment, entertainment.
I'll spell it out and link it below.
Just spell it out.
Yeah.
.blogspot.com. And then I also
Shepherd-entertainment.blogspot.com.
Yes. And then I also have a web, which is Shepherd-entertainment.com. But I haven't updated that in a very long time. So I found out that I had certain talents when I started breaking MK Ultra, and I ended up 40 years later, I'm 65. So 40 years later, my first fiance, boyfriend, handler, who was my manager and my agent, gets back in touch with me. He wants to see me. Right. And so I forgave him for all the crap that he did, but he didn't change. He is who he is. But I did go back to see him. The reason why they wanted me there was they knew I was writing. and they wanted to know what I was writing other than the things that I was posting. So I started writing Bradford and Valentine because I said I was going to write my life story, but then I was like, you know what? I'm not that interesting. Right. And then later on, I found out I actually kind of am a little interesting. And so,
Well, more than just I mean, you're being very humble right now, more than just a little, because some of the things that we were talking about leading up to this interview was blowing my mind. So I'm
right.
excited to get into some of that.
So, I was told when I left my husband that you will be arrested, you will be thrown in the crazy house, and my sister keeps calling. I told her I can't. I'm on air. So I was told, and all the things that my husband told me. He was a police officer, men in blue, right? They all stick together, fraternal order of police. In case people don't understand that is a fraternal order. And all those things happened to me. So I did get put in a crazy house, and it wasn't because I was acting out or doing anything weird. I got electronically triggered by a picture that showed up on my phone, and I can't even tell you what it was. Just my phone shook. I looked, and that was it. I was under MK Ultra, and that's the last time that can happen, because once you're aware, then it changes their ability to hypnotize or MK Ultra, because now you're aware, you're acutely aware of, that's a trigger, right? Or, and there are many different triggers. So there's colors, and these are also the way you can get your memories back. So colors, smells, olfactory, all of your senses, sight, music will take you back to the moment that you heard that song first. And I'm a singer, so I was singing a lot of the songs. Like I sang Boys from Summer, and that took me to a precise moment in Newport Beach. Okay. Movies, a movie that you saw at one particular time will bring back a memory. Smells of colognes, of foods. So when Darrell had asked me to come back to see him, he was in Lake Havasu. I said to him, send me one of your shirts, the collared shirts, a blue collared shirt with some polo on it, because that was one of the things that he wore. I was 17 when I met him. So when I got the shirt, I actually put it on and I wore it, because I used to sleep in his shirts when I was 17. So that engendered that feeling of when I was 17, when I was very compliant, when I was naive, and when I was in love with this person. That was what led me to say, okay, I will come and see you, because of that olfactory memory, the smell. It literally brought me back to when I was 17. And I knew I had to go back there to retrieve some memories, but they wanted me there because I had started writing a television series. It started out as a book, but it became a television series called Bradford and Valentine. And I predicated some of the characters on real people. But I then realized that most of the things I was writing about were real people. And it kind of freaked me out. And then I started seeing, as I was breaking the MK Ultra, I started seeing that I had a lot of other talents, like ciphering, which I deciphered a cipher. I was sent to a Panera bed when I was in Branson, and I deciphered a cipher. And when I went in there, there was like 3 people there. It was really quiet, right? There was one guy sitting in the corner reading a paper. So it reminded me of a rendezvous that I had with John at a Motel 6, where when I pulled up, there was a guy sitting at the pool. He picks up a paper. And then when I go up the stairs, I say, are you being followed? He says, why? I said, because the guy down by the pool, he picked up a paper when I came in. He said, and I said, well, he's reading the paper upside down. I'm leaving. Okay. So even then I was acutely aware and in tune, but yet not. I don't even know if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, it seems like you knew something was amiss, but maybe you couldn't pinpoint the exact thing.
Exactly. And when I first met John, he looked very familiar. And then later on, when I saw him on the red carpet with a certain entertainer, I was like, oh, shit. He looks like my brother David that I grew up with, because I didn't grow up with John. And I didn't know that my first fiance even knew John. Although when I was out in Lake Havasu, he takes me back to California, and his his garage, he was a race car driver, and he builds replicas as well. And he also has a Ferrari and a bunch of other. He's got like 6 exotic cars, and so his garage was about like 3 blocks from John's office. And then, just to rub it in, because I didn't know they knew each other, okay? Then he drives me to John's high school and says, "Oh, I don't even know why I'm here." So when I met him, I was 17, and I said, "Well, maybe you came to pick up another 17-year-old." I'm kind of smart, smart mouth. And so Darrell, when I first met Darrell, and these are inherent talents, and this is what happens to people. They are dismissive, they're dissuaded. People say you're just being dramatic, but in fact, you're right on, because you do have these innate psychic abilities. I want to say I'm not unusual. I want to say there's millions of people like me. So I don't necessarily stand apart. I believe we all have these abilities, but we've been lied to by the government, saying if you say that you can hear people telepathically, then you must be schizophrenic, right? Because telepathy doesn't actually exist. Well, that's a lie, because they know it exists, and you also have extraterrestrial factions that communicate, that you've been hearing about for years. They communicate telepathically. For instance, the Greys, small mouth or no mouth, because they don't need it anymore. And they communicate telepathically. Also reptilians, telepathically. So why, and I believe we have some genetic anomalies. We are actually bred within some of these species that maybe would enhance those abilities. So I'm not unique. I'm not here to stand and say, "Hey, look at me." I'm not that unique. I believe that we all have these abilities. But when they tell you, "Oh, that's just crazy," or whatever, they know, but they're dissuading you, and they're putting you in a state of denial. So when I met Darrell when I was 17, I knew I was going to meet him. Now, how would I know I was going to meet him? I was not a person that sewed, but I actually got this material. I think it was in Zayre's, or it was at one of the stores in Florida. And I was working in it, and I found this blue material, and I ran my hand over it, and I got a bolt of the material, and I cut out a top and a bottom, a dress, and I sewed it, hand sewed it.
First time?
Yes, I'd never done this before in my life. Hand sewed it. It took me a couple of days, and then I bought a new pair of wedgie sandals, and I cut bangs in my hair. And then when I went to school, I was taken out to lunch by one of my friends who was, I would likely say he was a savant, because he was at the school that I went to as a performing arts school. And I think they had a lot of MK Ultra programs running in that school. And he was conducting orchestras when he was like 7. So he took me to a Denny's. He sat us in front of a picture window. At the picture window, this car pulls up. It looked like the Great Gatsby car. It was baby blue. I was wearing a baby blue dress. Okay. It said Dreamy. The license plate said Dreamy. Darrell got out, and he was wearing a baby blue cotton leisure suit. So when he approached me, we looked like we were Ken and Barbie. So how did that work? Because I knew I was going to meet somebody. I said, I'm going to meet somebody today. Because I was involved in these programs. They erased me, and they utilized me for psychic abilities. But then they would just be dismissive of you. They would erase you. You would be used in maybe time travel programs and not remember any of it. I could have gone my entire life and died never remembering. But and you're supposed to break MK Ultra like in your 20s or your 30s. So I was 58. And they knew that eventually I was going to come out of it if I didn't have a handler constantly, telling me how worthless I was, or, that, that's just silly, when in
How
fact.
much do you think you remember now, like percentage wise, like 10%?
I'm
or
remembering
80%?
a lot more. And I believe that, my journey is to continue this research until I am not on this planet anymore, because you will always be getting memories, unless you end up like Bruce Willis, and then his memory trail has ended. And I think Bruce Willis, I really like Bruce Willis, and I think that he was born in Germany, okay? And I think he was definitely MK Ultra. He was part of a Germanic project. He was born March 19th, 1955. Why do I know that date? Because that's my brother John's birthday. And he was born allegedly in Buffalo, New York. Now, when I researched the Hitler babies, I found out that they brought them through New York. And they
who were the Hitler babies?
The Hitler babies were babies that were made for, that were propagation for the Third Reich continuation, which would be the Fourth Reich. So they had the wives and men propagated this species in furtherance of that agenda. And they traded babies. So they would bring these babies into the United States, and then they would give them birth certificates in New York. So I thought that was weird, because my mom was also born in New York, and my aunt said, I said, when is my mom's actual birthday? She said, I don't know. She said she was very secretive about her past. She's a fake aunt. She's very secretive about her past. So as far as I know, I think she had 2 birth certificates. Right.
So a spy, basically. That, I mean, what else would you need 2 birth certificates for?
I think she actually volunteered for MK Ultra, because when I get locked up in the crazy house and I'm finding out that I have Eichmanns and Mengeles and Hitlers in my family, oh my, and I'm behind a locked door, and everyone's saying, Penny, why are you here? There's nothing wrong with you. And I said, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And I showed some people pictures, and they were like, shit. And they believed me, and they quit. Over 5 people quit from that facility. And I'm still friends with one individual who's still working there, a very good friend. And he believed me too. He even, when he said, when I first went in, he said, oh, I think she's our new administrator. Right? He said, yeah, you dress really well. I was like, seriously? Because I was, just because you're homeless doesn't mean you have to dress like trash. You can buy some nice stuff at Salvation Army. And I taught that to my brother David, because when my brother David was homeless too, he showered at the beach, and he looked a lot younger than he was. And he learned how you can dress, on pennies, literally when he's penny, but you can dress on pennies and still, look good. And your presence is, because I don't do drugs. I don't drink, but they did drug me for about 12 years. That was my husband's mission, was to slow kill me. And
what kind of drugs?
Oh God, like 50 different drugs. And they started when I had carpal tunnel. That's how they got to me, because I was a person that did naturopathic remedies. And then his family, they were all about the drugs. So his sister, totally on drugs. Mother, totally on drugs.
The Rockefeller medicine system, right?
Yes. And mother nurse, sister nurse. He was an EMT. He was also retired on a medical, and he was taking morphine. He was addicted to these. And he told me he wasn't on any drugs when I met him, because I said, I don't want to be with anybody on drugs. And within, 12 years, I ended up being doctor shopped, and then being put on freaking everything on the planet. And I lost my ability to speak, to think, and to walk. And at one point, I got off everything myself, which I could have died. I also went to a one doctor. Her name was Dr. Eisenhardt. And I'd gotten off of many of the things that they put me on by myself. And she said, the combination of things that you're on right now, they're very dangerous. I said, yes, I know. And it's my doctor who doctor shopped me and put me on all of these things. And I said, I'm getting off of them. And I was actually afraid to tell him, because I thought that was his agenda, to completely drug me. And at one point he said, oh, Penny, you're hallucinating. And I was like, really? And I went home, and I found out that he gave me 7 drugs which caused hallucinations, because the methodology was to keep me under, and they do this to kill you, to keep me under, so that I would never know who I actually was. Because I actually believe, when I started asking questions, I said, why does John look like Joseph Mengele? Why does my murdered brother David look like Rolf, Joseph and Irene Mengele's son? And why do I look like Irene Schoenbein Mengele?
And you bring up Mengele, so I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Fritz Springmeier's book.
Yes, I am. We've had him on our show.
So okay, so jumping right to it, he describes that Joseph Mengele might have been a Dr. Green, and that a
Yes.
Dr. Ewan Cameron
Yes.
from Canada was Dr. White. He's the one that was responsible for psychic driving, lots of the electroshock therapy. Do you remember going through any of those types of ordeals?
No, I don't. But then you wouldn't remember, would you?
Right. I mean, that was the point, was they were
Yes.
inducing amnesia and everything else.
Yes. I started studying Dr. Ewan Cameron when I was locked up. And I actually went to one of the psychiatrists that was there. And I said, what have they diagnosed? What did the CIA diagnose me with? That's what I said. And he said, they said that you're schizoaffective. I said, okay, so explain that to me.
Like a functional drunk.
Right. And he says, well, the schizo part, because they diagnosed my brother as schizophrenic. He was not. And I know exactly why they did that, because it was an MK Ultra doctor. So I said, so what's the schizo thing? He said, well, basically you're delusional. I said, well, and his name was John. John, you've known me now for about 6 months. Have I ever impressed you that I'm delusional? He said, no, Benny. You're the most grounded person I've ever met in my life. That's interesting, right? And then I said, and what's the affective part? Now he described the affective. It's actually like a kind of a bipolar thing, but he explained it that he said, well, you're just over emotional. So I looked at him and I was pissed. And I said, that'd be just effing great, John, if I wasn't an empath. Because I shake people's hands and I literally feel their pain. Because I could talk to somebody on the phone and start weeping. You can watch a show and we had an Israeli singer on the show the other day. She's in Tel Aviv. Her children are in a safe room. And I felt her and I almost started weeping on the show. That's who I am, because I am an empath and I do feel people's pain. And I also feel if people are evil. I can literally feel it on Messenger, on Facebook.
What does it feel like? Do you get like a specific feeling always, or is it slightly different depending on like what type of evil?
My tell is usually I start weeping. There's two different weeps. A weep because I feel their heart. I'm connecting with a person's pain in their heart, and then another weeping because it's just abject evil. It's a black evil. And that was kind of my tell in some of the churches that I went to, because I wept in 2 churches and they fell. So apparently I shouldn't be crying in your church because it's bad news for you.
If you feel the latter of those, right, the abject evil, is that a person that's in there, or are you basically like interpret that as an entity?
I don't know, because in some instances it is a person, but in other instances it is an entity in the person. So it depends on each individual. I've shaken people's hands and said, oh, your family knew Hitler personally.
Wow, that's quite the icebreaker, by the way.
And I could feel what I could, and I proved it. So one individual, I said, wow, your family knew Hitler personally. And then within 20 minutes, I found out, because I knew his father's name, I found out that his father had high secret clearances. I found out where his patents were. And then I found there was an individual who was a Nazi, a high-ranking Nazi, that helped create the silent gas that looked exactly like this person. Same name.
Is when it looks exactly with the same name, are you assuming that it's the same person? It's a doppelganger? It's like,
No, not necessarily, but definitely within the lineage. And the doppelgangers exist too, because I found a clone of John on the X-Files on season 11, episode 4, Lost Art of Forehead Sweat, which is about time travel. It's about the Mandela effect, only they're saying the Mengele effect, and they're saying essentially that Joseph Mengele was the one that created a bunch of different time divergencies because he traveled through time and he created It wasn't the Mandela effect. It was the Mengele effect.
Wow, that's wild.
You should watch that one. And there's a clone of John in there. I saw the clone and I was like, oh my God, I know it's John because I slept with him.
That show in particular is definitely one of my entry points into just all things sort of weird and paranormal. So are there any particular episodes that were based on things that you know for sure are real?
I believe that they were all based on real stories, but there are people that have written for the X-Files that I've talked to that said, well, not all of them were real. But I'm like, dude, you don't even know. You don't even know. You don't even know who's in your writing room, because I know that Chris had to get some CIA help in there. We had Tracy Torme on the show. He's the son of Mel Torme, and he's also a screenwriter. And he's a little under the weather right now. We're hoping that he gets better and he comes back. But Tracy did Sliders, and
wow, that's one of my
right?
favorite shows of all time by
Yeah,
far.
and I totally love Tracy and his wife. I mean, they're just amazing, amazing people. And he's also he did Fire in the Sky, so he researched that. He went out and found
Also
Travis
one
Walton.
of my favorite
Right.
that movie in particular, whenever someone describes like alien abduct, even if it's Hollywooded up, that scene
It
where he's
was
in like the
Hollywooded up.
membrane and he has to break through that. I mean, that is my go-to like reference when someone says alien abduction.
Yeah, I said, yeah, Tracy, I remember that movie like vividly, because I said I will never forget that one scene where he's getting tortured, because I believe I was abducted as well. And are these abductions, are they all legit aliens, or are they our military parading as aliens because they've used hypnosis on you when you were a baby? So there's code words that they can use and erase you so that you're not going to remember, because the art of hypnosis is you're feeling sleepy. Oh, now you're asleep. And when you awake, you will be refreshed and you won't remember anything.
Right.
So if they give you a code word when you're a baby, all they need to do is say that code word and you're out. So like when I said I ended up in the crazy house and I saw a figure, I saw something appear on my phone, and then I became compliant. My sister-in-law said that I could go over to my niece's, and I said, really? Because my brother said I couldn't, but now I can. And they're like, yes. So then I drive over there, and now I'm like full on MK Ultra. Now they don't even give you orders. They give you suggestions. Wouldn't you like to do this? And that's part of neurolinguistic programming. When they say something very simplistic, and my first husband, Steve Zenos, had his MA in psychology, and he ran his parents' psychological practice. And they were in business for 38 years in the entertainment industry as well, because his father was a prolific musician, a jazz musician. He played sax. And I believe that Jolie West was one of their mentors, because Jolie West was at UCLA for since 69 to 89. I think he died some in the 90s. And, they were up in Palos Verdes. So I believe firmly, I think I might have even had dinner with Jolie West and not even known who he was.
Wow. He seems to be the unsung linchpin in so many of these stories. Like whenever his name comes up, that there's going to be a wild story to follow. Whenever he's the one that basically gave an elephant LSD and barbiturates until it died.
That alone, I mean, I'm sorry, but that's like high treason to me, to kill an elephant, a beautiful elephant, in such a horrific manner.
And there's rumors that he was also on LSD at the time when he was doing it, just to put, because there's a quote that I'm just going to paraphrase, but he said that he wanted to become the master in bringing people to the brink of insanity, and then kind of like peeking over the edge but not falling over. But it seemed like he was always in the vicinity. I think there was another rumor that he interviewed McVeigh. There's documents that he interviewed Jack Ruby after the JFK assassination.
Went a little bit crazy. He also interviewed Sirhan Sirhan. He also could implant memories in people, so he made somebody think that they were guilty when they weren't.
One of the wildest quotes that I remember reading from it, and this was a public quote, so it chances are it was only a tiny bit true, if at all, but he said that the strongest weapon that he had for mind control was essentially sleep deprivation. That sleep deprivation trumped any drug or torture or anything else you could think of, that if you could just deprive someone of sleep for a few days to a week, you basically just had full control over them.
Yeah, that's what my mother practiced as well. And she also practiced hypnosis, and she also read from the Book of the Dead. And I believe she actually she was gay. I found out she was gay when I was like 17. And I think there was a gay women's club that worked under Aquino, kind of like the Sisters of the Traveling Pants.
Yeah,
but
we're talking Michael Aquino, Temple of Set, right?
Yes. And they were like, I'd have to look up the name of this group, but it was gay women that were witches that worked with Michael Aquino. And I think I might have met him too, because I remember my mom telling me, introducing me to this individual. It was either him or LaVey, Anton LaVey. It might have been Anton, because she said, this is Tony. Right.
Mm.
And, later on, I'm like, who would have even known? I mean, for criminy's sake, he could have showed up at one of my gigs. I said, I think he might have showed up and played keyboards at one of my gigs. And then
he did. He played piano. Yeah.
And then I looked and I was like, oh, shit. He's a piano player. He could have showed up at any of my gigs.
There's so many different.
Sit in. Okay.
There's a lot of different places that I want to bring this. Before I even forget this, because we were talking about X-Files and like a lot of the paranormal theories that were coming out in the 90s. Do you remember John Teeter, who was supposed to be? What's your thoughts on him now, after 30 years have passed?
Everything, right? And when I was in the crazy house, I had a lot of time on my hands.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'd work until 12 o'clock at night, and I'd do it all over again. And I had a computer and my phone. So, I was literally talking to everybody.
So you had a computer while you were in there?
Yes, I did.
Okay. That sounds like you just had plenty of time to just like harness more information.
Like,
that was
and my brother actually helped pay for some of my, like the Netflix and stuff like that, because I said I need that for research, and he was like, yes, you do. Right? My other evil brother. I got a lot of evil brothers, and that's how I found out there was a girl in there that cleaned the toilets. I will be forever grateful to her. Everybody is important. Nobody is above another person. Okay. You treat everybody with respect and love, because every single person on this planet is important, including the evil ones. Because you got to know that they're evil, because they're gonna F with you. Okay. So she said, you should watch Stranger Things. And I was like, really? I'm in this locked up place. There's nothing wrong with me. And I just found out that my family are Hitler's, Eichmann's, Mengeles, and Spears. I'm not all that happy. They're CIA, they're deep state, and they're actually in the administration, in the presidency. So, I'm not too excited about that, but I watched it. And when I watched it, I wept, because I was like, that little girl is me. And I was so sure that it was me that I sent an email to Darrell, and I said, I know that little girl is me. And I told my brother Rob, I know that little girl is me. And I don't know how they're doing that, but I know that little girl is me. I was born August 11th, 1958. Penny L. That was my first name, Penny, and the middle initial L. And Penny also means, it's short for Penelope, but the AKA for Penelope is L, ELLE. And my middle initial also L. Born August 11th, 1958. I was born in Hollywood Memorial Hospital in Hollywood, Florida. I lived in Ives Estates off 95 in Florida. And I went to Mady Ives Elementary. The little girl's name is Jane Ives, as in Jane Doe from Ives. Now, I'm going to actually tell you, I don't believe that the Duffer Brothers who wrote this have any clue as to the fact that they actually wrote about a real person. And I was finding that when I was writing, that I was writing about real people, and it was freaking me out. So I don't think they know. They think we disparately picked up these references, right? They were also born in Durham, North Carolina. And I believe that's where my mother volunteered for MK Ultra, because she was a nurse in North Carolina. I don't know if she went to Duke University or not, but Duke University was in my heart as like that I'd been there. But sometimes you haven't actually been there, but maybe your mother's been there and you've got some genetic memory about that. I don't believe now. I initially believed I was at Montauk, but I think my mom might have been there because my mom was born in Jamaica, New York, and she painted lighthouses. And I also think that I might have actually been there, like in a time travel chair in Florida. I don't recall, driving there or, having my parents drive me there or anything. I don't have a lot of memories from when I was young at all.
And when you say that the time travel chair, that makes me think of what they call the Montauk chair. And I
Right.
think this was documented and written by Preston Nichols and Peter Moon, and they had the
Right.
whole series of
I
the
don't actually
Montauk.
like Peter Moon, and Preston's dead, but I think Preston actually might have been a perpetrator. That's my feeling, because when I talked to Pete Moon, I said, I'm the actual 11 depicted in Stranger Things. And he's like, well, you have to prove that. I said, I don't have to prove a effing thing, Pete. I said, I'm just
What
going to write about the 3,000, threads that all point to me. I mean,
I'm
my
interested
second
more in your
husband, his
dynamic with
name
Peter
was
Moon.
Xenos. His name means stranger. I was Mrs. Stranger. I had a band named Stranger.
Do you think that this was intentional? Like
No,
it was so what is it, just they've tapped into whatever that frequency is where the
something,
information's at?
because they were going to, when they went to college, they were going to go to the University of Florida. I'm from Florida, but then they changed their mind. They went to Chapman College, which is 15 minutes from John's, I refer to it as his CIA office. That I found that very interesting. Additionally, I was pregnant in May of 1983, and I was told if I did not have an abortion by my boyfriend, who became my husband, that his parents would frame me, plant drugs on me, throw me in prison for 25 years, and take the twin boys that I had and raise them, and I would never see them. The Duffer brothers were born 9 months later, in February of 1984,
Are they
in
twins?
Durham, North Carolina. Yes, they are.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So how
So
much of the
are they genetically linked to me somehow? Were they implanted in vitro fertilization? I don't know anything about the parents. I don't know anything about their actual story. I've never met them, but I've come to the conclusion that they don't have a clue that the individual that they wrote about actually exists. I mean, there were parallels also in other characters like Max. Max is a little girl. My best friend, who I call my sister, her name's Susie. She's called me twice since we've been on this podcast. And so Max's mother, Susan, marries Sam and moves to San Diego. I married Sam and moved to San Diego. They end up living in Mission Valley. Do you know how big San Diego is? It's like LA, right? You can live in a million places in LA, the LA area. San Diego is huge. I was Mrs. Mission Valley. I lived in Granville, right by Mission Valley. And then her brother hangs out at Sunset Cliffs. My brother was murdered on Mission Beach, about 8 minutes from Sunset Cliffs. So I wrote to the writer and I'm like, how are you doing this? And the writer has written with the Duffer brothers, but of course she never wrote me back. She's a young writer. She must have thought, well, this person's psychotic. But I'm trying to piece it together. I'm like, how do they know this stuff? 11 ends up being given to a sheriff. I was in a sheriff's family. I was literally like given to this person that was supposed to slow kill me.
Are there
His
any
name. Go ahead.
like episodes or particular plot lines that jogged extra memories for you where you were like, oh wow, that like now I remember this thing that I went through because of the show?
Well, the fact that they shaved her head and the fact that they put her in this dress that I had when I was 3 years old. There was a picture that my brother Rob has of that dress. I was 3 and I had cap sleeves. She had long sleeves. but I had that exact same dress. What is that about? My mom shaved my head until I was like in 7th grade.
What about
They
the
used to
Eggo
call me a
waffles?
boy. Well, here's what the Eggo waffles are. The Eggo waffles are let go of my ego. She goes into the freezer to get her ovum, my Eggos. Let go my eggs, because they've taken her eggs and they've frozen them and they've used them to create genetic hybrids and anomalies.
Wow. Right. This is another thing that I remember from Fritz Springmeier's book, is that he mentioned like the Moonchild ritual and these genetic lines where when someone has some kind of psychic ability, that they try to nurture that and they try to get that person to breed with other people that have psychic abilities, and then at a certain point you're just kind of pumping out babies that have this predisposed like skill sets. And again, another phrase from the late 90s, early 2000s was indigo children. I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
that phrase,
yeah. The
but
indigo children were actually, I think that was one of the groups that that Marjorie Cameron Parsons, who was married to Jack Parsons,
Right.
started in Palm Desert. And, she's a Luciferian. And I know that there were certain people that said Jack Parsons wasn't a bad person. Or they also said that L. Ron Hubbard wasn't a bad person. He was kind of a genius. And I'm like, no, he was that wasn't propaganda. The guy was literally, crazy. He started out as a fiction writer, and he and Jack Parsons tried to bring in the Antichrist. This wasn't, it's not a joke. It's commonly known, and he tortured his wife, who actually was the lover of Jack Parsons, which I think it was his wife's sister. And then he left with her and had a child with her, and then told her, wanted her to go through auditing to prove that she was crazy. And then he also told her he took their child and cut her up in little pieces and threw her into the sea. And the man was like full on evil and crazy.
we're talking about the Babylon working
CIA
ritual
stuff. That's all. It's basically a religious faction that serves Satan. So I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in God, but I believe that the religions are they're all propagandist, and they're MK Ultra constructs to tell you a little piece of the truth and to actually separate you from God. Some people refer to it as source, but separate you from that knowledge and that love, which will guide you and save you. Because, in the Catholic religion, they're like, hey, you need to talk to this priest, while the priests are molesting you and telling you Jesus made me do it, and then say, no, you were too sexy for your pants, and that's why I went after you. I mean, we have a gentleman on the show. His name's Chris O'Leary. He's on every other Friday, and he was raped by Father Valentine, who is a roommate of now Cardinal Dolan, who is actually, according to Chris, running for Pope.
Was Valentine the one that had the movies made about him in the 90s too?
Yes, Chris found out about it because of Spotlight. That's how he found out. And he was erased in MK Ultra, because MK Ultra, and I went to go on this one guy's show, and he said, well, you don't talk about being multiple personality disorder or or dissociative identity. I said, well, I did disassociate a great deal, but they use me in the entertainment industry. In the entertainment industry, they teach you to assume other characters. So you're literally doing the study in character, but you need to come back to, who you actually, your root person is. So, some actors have actually gotten lost in those characters and have ended up committing suicide because the parts that they were in were so corrosive and overwhelming that it overtook them. So that's a significant, I think, departure for me, which made it easier for me to, when I finally came out, within 2 months, I realized that there was 11 and Agent X. Those were the two names that they used under MK Ultra, which they used drugs, and then they also used neuro-linguistic programming, because my husband Steve was adept at neuro-linguistic programming, as were his parents. That's one of the tools that they use. So you would say, and I use this example all the time, you'd say, you don't want milk, do you? And you're
Right.
like, what? And say, yeah, you want milk, right? And you're like, what? Because now you've been confused with a gesture. And then let's add some components in the military industrial entertainment complex. Lighting, fog, colors. You don't have smell-o-vision yet. Hand signals, words, strings of words, music, frequency of music. You add all of those for a very compact MK Ultra experience, which can overtake you, hypnotize. Remember the Outer Limits and Twilight Zone? Okay. We have now taken over your television set,
Yeah, don't bother adjusting the dial. Yeah.
Right. Well, we've now taken over your mind. And now with Elon Musk Neuralink, we want to connect you to the internet highway. So you don't even have to worry about calling anybody on your phone. You don't have to worry about losing your phone or having your phone hijacked. But, if you don't pay your bill, are they going to fry your head?
Right. Or do you have to put your thoughts on mute? Like if you don't want anyone else to know what you're thinking? Is there like a
all
mute
they have
button?
to do is say, let's listen to Penny today. Dial in LA Shepard at 9999999 and see what she's thinking about right now. Or they
Be a
say,
new business plan.
wait, or they say, let's go to this psychopath and tell him it's time to kill. And then they go out and they shoot up a school. Or they, go out and slaughter a village. They've been using targeted weaponry in the military for quite some time, and they use the voice to skull as well, in the capacity that it can be on the airwaves. So then they say to the troops, "This is the voice of Allah. Put down your arms."
You were just talking about the voice to skull, also known as V2K technology, and that's where they can. The best analogy that I can usually give is they have these new sound bars out. You go to Walmart or you go to wherever you Best Buy, and what they do is they don't actually play audio through the speaker. They play a sonic kind of like a beam, and once that beam hits a wall or it hits your couch or it hits the ceiling, then it makes the sound. So that's kind of what I've understood that the voice to skull technology is that it's this silent beam that if you have line of sight, and then as soon as it hits something, it can make the noise. So if it hits the top of your head, or if they hit like your jawbone, then it's resonating, like your skull is the one that's producing the audio, but it sounds like it's coming from inside your head. It's fascinating concept.
We have an individual that's on our show. Her name is Amy Holm. Know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Amy Holm is Amy's audios. So if you feel that you've been attacked by direct energy weapons, by acoustic energy weapons, she was an MP in the military. So, she's not just some Joe Schmo. She does extensive forensic auditing through a whole schematics of myriad of things that she does. And, go to her website. If you think you've been attacked, she might be able to help you. She actually proves in a court of law. And she said when Hawaii happened, she showed us some of her reports about something different. And she said that the former chief of police in Maui had contacted her, and when she wanted to use her methodologies for tracking down sex trafficked children. Now, years ago, they'd have to put an implant in you, like in your skull or somewhere in the back of your nape of your neck, behind your ear. But I don't believe they even have to do that anymore. They can just target you from cell tower to cell tower, from a satellite in the sky. And Elon Musk is putting up thousands of satellites in the sky. And then he wants to hook everyone up to Neuralink into a hive mind and put you on the web. So eventually what will happen is you're going to have an integration of human and android AI, robotics, and infiltrating within, residing in your head. So where people will hear voices in their head that are saying things like you're worthless and 24/7, and they can't get those thoughts out of their head, and they're not their thoughts. They're targeted. I've had a bunch of people on the show that are 24/7 being targeted by the direct energy weapons, and they are real. The military is utilizing sound weapons. Look at Waco. That was just a preliminary in which they utilized sound to overcome and to keep people awake, right? Because you want to make sure that they turn psychotic if they don't have enough sleep.
Right, that Jolie West findings, and I think in Waco they played like dolphin noises and rock music, but then there was also recordings of rabbits being slaughtered, and that probably does something deep down into your mind if you just hear that constantly.
Yeah.
Animals being tortured.
Can you imagine being on the FBI team listening to that crap? I mean, I'm not saying that the people that they played it at, like the actual victims that were murdered, that wasn't bad enough, but now you're on the force. So maybe you're not even apprised of MK Ultra. Are you going to have flashbacks for the rest of your life about those noises? Because now those noises become a resonant frequency in your head, and they play back. Because if you have a photographic memory, which many people do, that will be resonant. That's resonant now, literally like in your DNA.
That gets a little bit scary. And the Waco one is crazy because that was one of the first times they did it in the public. Like they were doing this on camera during live streams, and it almost feels like either nobody knows what we're doing, so it's fine, or nobody can stop us from what we're doing, so it's fine. But either way, it was fine. They all got away with it and did it again and again. So
yeah, that
I
was
feel like that's what they
Michael
learned.
Aquino's and the Phoenix Project. That was their. It was actually the Phoenix Project, I believe, was the precept for the CIA, in which that's what they utilize today in forms of torture. Their manual for deception.
I don't want to gloss over this because I find this incredibly fascinating that the character 11 from Stranger Things could very likely be based on you. All the powers that they ascribe to her, so she can do astral projection and see where like military people are, almost pinpoint them.
A lot of people can
has
do that. I can do it, but a lot of
she's
people can do that.
telekinesis where like she can throw people across the room or like hurt them by just thinking about it. How real are those sort of techniques?
They're real.
Is that
I haven't thrown anybody across the room, but I do remember when I told my handler when I was in Illinois, he was late, and I find I'm a very conservative individual, and I show up like an hour or 2 hours early. If I have to do a gig or whatever, I show up early to prepare. I try not to be late. If I'm going to be late, I call and say I'm going to be late. And unfortunately, I was in the this is like a first for me that I didn't call you because I didn't have my phone on me, and I was in the barn.
It was puppy related, so that's all you had to say.
So,
puppy related. You get a pass.
But and I did have you on my calendar, and I had another show that I was supposed to do that actually got canceled for today as well. But normally I would call and say, hey, I'm going to be late. This is the problem that I'm having, and so he showed up like an hour and a half late, and I was angry, and I said, that's a total lack of respect. He didn't apologize, or even offer an excuse or anything. He just showed up late, knowing that I was there for whatever his little, gig was, why he didn't show up late. And I said, I'm so angry, I could literally pick that truck up and throw it and smash it in the window. And he said, please don't.
Yeah.
And I said, can I do that? And he's like, yes. And I said, huh? And I do remember I did start a storm because I was very upset when I found out John was my brother. And I thought that his family was actually, I thought they were from a mob-based family, which I'm sure that they, I thought they were from Carlo Gambino's family. So I was very angry. And so I texted him and said, I'm pissed with like 5,000 S's and 1 T. And he said, why? And he knew that was going to make me even angrier. And I said, because I found out all my family are psychopaths and liars and criminals, and you're one of them. And I was very, very angry. I was really angry. I can't even tell you how angry I was. And then when I started talking to George, who was my handler, we started reading out of the script from Supernatural. Don't do that. I'm just telling you, dude.
The TV show?
Yes, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay.
Like, don't even watch the show, or just
No,
don't read
watch
the
the show, but do not freaking read this from the script. It's just don't. So I started reading from it, and then I'd been in the Starbucks like all day writing, and I'd been kind of praying for a tornado to hit Branson because I was angry at Branson too. I've forgiven Branson since then. But the lights went out in the Starbucks. The lights went out in the neighborhood. It started thundering. It started lightning. And the police came and the fire department came. It shut down Capitol Boulevard. And they said, Penny, did you start this storm? And I said, I don't think so. And they said, we think you did because you've been praying for a tornado all day. And I said, I don't think I can do that. And they said, we think you did this. And I was like, really? I think I have to go now. And so I packed up the computer and I got in the car, but I was still very, very upset. And it started lightning. I prefer lightning to thunder because thunder is just too loud. But it was, and so I got on the freeway and I was weeping. And I said, I wanted John to be drowned and revived and drowned and revived and drowned and revived and drowned and revived, because I think that's what they did to me. They waterboarded me. And then I was just, the more I cried, the more it rained. And then I put my hand in front of the window in the car, in the truck, and I said, I want all the cars to be off the highway. And I also said I wanted the planes to fall from the sky, but I didn't want them to hurt any good people, just the bad people. And then George called me and said, slow the car down. And he said, did you start this storm? And I'm like, why is everyone asking me that? I don't know. Can I do that? And he said, yes, you can. He said, I knew it was you because I saw the lightning and I fell to my knees. It flashed in front of my eyes, in front of the window, and I knew it was you. And I said, I can't stop the storm. If I started it, then I started it, but I can't stop it. And I was so angry. He said, slow down. And I said, I'm not going over the speed limit, George. And by the way, there's no cars on the freeway anymore.
Where did they go? Did they just disappear? Did they just all pull off?
People just decided, oh, I don't need to be on the freeway anymore.
Is that something that you would ever have control over, or is it completely involuntary to have that sort of effect on the environment?
I think when you have that much anger, it can be destructive. That was a very bad storm. And then when I got to George, I stopped the truck and I gave him my car keys and it stopped raining.
Is there an alternate version of that where, like, if you're in a really good mood or elated, like you get a nice summer breeze, or
actually, yes. When I was homeless and it was hot, I said, I wish it would rain, and it rained. And it cooled the area off. I was like, thank you, God.
Do you think that's what you're channeling into, is essentially like talking to God?
Well, I think that he saved me a million times. I've talked to God since I was a little kid, since I was like 3. And I think that he sees what's going on this planet. And those that have good hearts are in a different frequency. So when individuals talk about being in the love frequency, I mean, you can't be in a love bubble all day. And especially when you're, in the Wake Nation, we talk about some very horrific things, but it's necessary. We have whistleblowers on there that have been attacked and raped. And, I was as a child. And the healing, I believe, comes from, number one, writing and from being given a voice, the ability to actually, speak out and help people in a tangible way. So I know that I know that Awake Nation is my is sent to me by God, because my brother David was murdered. And David Zublik is 1 year older than me. My brother David was 2 years older than me. But I believe that David was sent to me to carry out this mission. And David, David knows that too. We become very, very close, like brother and sister. He makes me laugh like my brother David did. I mean, like the milk coming out the nose kind of laugh. And and we keep each other even. I think he keeps me even. I keep him even. And I love his wife Linda. I love the fact that he's given me faith again in marriage, because I pretty much lost my faith after being with this individual for 25 years of my life and finding out that I'd been deceived about everything this person was and about everyone in my life. That's a pretty painful thing, to find out everybody was lying about who they were, and that's just really hard. And so we're having more and more people finding out that the government that they believed in, that they were patriots under, that they were lied to.
Not the American government.
Yes.
The American government?
The American government.
Gosh.
And we have we consider ourselves an alternative news media. And so when we read the news from the Mockingbird media, we try to disseminate the truth from the lies. No one really knows what the truth is. Paranoidamerican.com, you can be paranoid, but you're not actually paranoid if it's really happening to you.
Right. That's what I believe.
You're not actually paranoid if you're finding out that that these things existed. And so people that come to us are like, you're not going to believe this. I'm like, dude, trust me, I will.
You don't know who you're talking to.
Yeah, I will believe. Take a look at my blog. I will believe you.
That's actually a perfect transition into a really quick little segment. It's meant to be fun, and it's just to get an idea of what you believe. So the rules are really simple. It's basically just a 0 to 10 rating. So a 0 rating means it's all BS, and a 10 means it's absolutely true. Like, I'm convinced of it.
Okay.
Does that sound pretty good?
Yeah.
All right, I'm just going to rapid fire a few questions at you right after this little...
Hey, conspiracy buffs, I double dare you to take some PCP, the Paranormal Conspiracy Probe. On your marks, get set, and go!
All right. Flat Earth. Where are you at on the Earth being a flat plane from 0 to 10?
I think it's actually like kind of a dome, but it's like not completely flat. It's like close to flat.
So 5-ish?
No, probably 8-ish.
Okay. Dinosaurs, the way that we're conventionally told about them, if you went into the Museum of Natural History and you point up at the T-Rex, how real is that concept of the T-Rex?
Dinosaurs are real. They're alive today. So, they've been at Skinwalker Ranch. Reptilians are from the dinosaur dynasty, I believe. They're still here.
Okay, so 10.
Yeah.
What about dragons? Do you think dragons ever existed at any point in history? Like flying, fire-breathing dragons?
Yes, 10. And the mythos, everything that you thought was mytho is actually real.
Okay, let's I love this this line of thinking here. So normally I ask people like MK Ultra, Project Monarch. I almost feel like it would be pointless to ask you the 0 to 10 on that.
Yes, it never ended. So let's 0 to 10. Let's just put it at 100.
100. What about Project Monarch in particular, which was the one that Fritz Springmeier wrote about?
Yes, I think that under the sub projects of MK Ultra, they said there were like 159, but they lie about everything. And I actually found a back door in a genie.com, which was a repository for scientific information under the Mengele name.
Really? What did you find?
I found just this people depositing scientific information in different languages and stuff, and I was like, that H. I don't even know where that back door was, but I did find out that I was a Ciphers. Also, at one point, I actually utilized this later on for somebody that transported drugs to my sister's house. I remember taking my coffee cup, my travel cup, and trying to unscrew the bottom. And then I was like, what's that about? Right. And then later on, I actually, when we were looking for these drugs at this person, I said, just unscrew the bottom of that. She's like, what? We unscrewed the bottom. There you go.
All right, here's one out of left field a little bit. Did human beings land on the moon?
Well, they might have, but it was faked.
You mean the TV footage was faked?
Yes. So, we already know that. I always forget his name. Who's 2001?
Stanley Kubrick.
Okay, Stanley Kubrick. The reason why I think I black out on his name is because an NSA guy followed us when we went to go see Angel Has Fallen, which I researched and I did a whole, cipher on that.
Is that a movie?
Yeah. And he was waiting outside, and it was about a man named Trumbull gets killed by a drone attack, right? And our president was Trump at the time. So this guy stops at our place, and he looked like Stanley Kubrick. So I think he like blacked me out or something. And he was a pilot, and he showed us that he was a pilot, and I think he said he was NSA, and just happened to know. I said, "Do you know me?" And he's like, "Yes." And then he came into the theater, and I said, he said he was going to do everything within his power to take out Trump. And I said, first of all, why are you telling me this? Like, I can't do anything about that. But secondly, you're telling me that you're going to take out a sitting president? I said, give me my card back. And he's like, I go, I don't even know you. And he's like, and he sticks his hand out. I go, no, you don't understand. I don't want to know you. I want you to disappear just as easily as you appeared. You Stanley Kubrick freakazoid looking dude from the NSA that said that you were a pilot. And he showed us his pilot's license. I was like, oh my God, that looks like Stanley Kubrick. Did Stanley Kubrick really die?
Well, Stanley Kubrick was terrified of planes. He used to listen to air traffic controller. This is so weird because he had all this time. He could be doing movies and talking with, huge hitters, but he would spend time listening to air traffic controllers, and he would listen for close calls, and he would write them down, and he would tell people like, and this is why I don't fly on planes. Look at all these close calls that were today.
This guy was a pilot, but I'm telling you, I looked at him and I was like, oh my God, that looks like Stanley Kubrick. And I said, do you know me? And he's like, because he was talking to Susie, and he was like saying all these things, and he was talking about all these places that we had just talked about with this guy that we, was a drug dealer that we kicked out. And he's talking about all these places. And then he gets to Alaska, and I was just ignoring him. Right. But when he got to Alaska, I was just like, and I turned around and said, do you know me? And he says, yes. I mean, that's like been, like when I deciphered the cipher, when I was in Branson, I was sent to the Panera Bread, okay, because I was actually at the Butterfly House in Branson, outside talking to Doc Holliday, swear to God, okay, he's a bass player. And he sent me to the Panera Bread. So I go to the Panera Bread, and there's a guy in there. I'd started telling this story before. There's a guy in there reading the paper, and I go outside to play with my stress ball because I'm stressed because I feel something. And I'm like, did I get set up being sent here? Because I went there to use the Wi-Fi, and there's like no one in here. Every time you go someplace, there's nobody in there. There's like 3 people in there drinking coffee. And so I come back in, and the guy left. Remember the newspaper story with John?
Yeah, that was upside down.
Right. So then the guy leaves. So I walk over, I sit in the chair, and I look around, and I see the newspaper sitting over there folded. So I pick the newspaper up. I bring it back to the table. I open it up, and there's a puzzle section. And so the first thing in my head was the movie with Bruce Willis, Mercury Rising, with the savant kid who they put in the paper a puzzle to break that's our final test, to break a DOD code, right? The kid's a savant, and the kid calls the puzzle factory. So I know they do this like for real. Okay. It's not like a movie plot. They actually do this. So I look at it, and I'm like, I don't like puzzles. I'm not doing it. And then I look at it again, and it says there's a puzzle here, but there's a cipher here. And I was like, so I said, all right, fine. I'm going to do the cipher. And I did the cipher, and the cipher was about my brother John. I said there are 2 Johns. There's one in New York and there's one in Branson. So he was watching me. He knew I was in Branson. And he's also in the entertainment industry, and Branson is an entertainment town. It was a complex, it wasn't that complex, but it took me about maybe 20 minutes to do it. And there was a riddle at the end of it. And the riddle said, I went to the doctor because I sprained my ankle. And the doctor said, I feel your sprain. And that's what Joseph Mengele would say, because he's a doctor, but he can't feel any empathy. But he can physically feel the sprain in the tissue, but he can't feel pain. And that was the riddle at the end.
That almost sounds like NLP too.
Cipher.
That also sounds like NLP, where it's like, I can feel your sprain, because the last 3 words of that are feel your sprain. And if you say that to someone, they also end up feeling it because you just commanded them, feel your sprain.
Right. And sprain, there's pain in there. Okay. So, and when I got done with it, then when I talked to my handler, George, he told me he worked in a top secret facility in Heidelberg during the Cold War for a cipher, for generals in the cipher department. And I was like, I thought I was talking to George, my drummer. And I was like, he said, did I tell you that? I'm like, no, George, I've worked with you a long time. You never told me you were in a top secret facility during the Cold War, George.
Yeah, it just never came up.
That
You
never
never
came up
asked.
when we're gigging and stuff. And then I found out it was a different George. And so I said, that's weird, because I just deciphered a cipher. I said, how did I do that? I'm a civilian. And he said, well, I can't do that. I said, but you work for generals in the cipher department. He said, well, he worked in Heidelberg. And he said, well, I just worked on the machines, but I can't decipher a cipher. I was like, really? That's weird.
Likely story.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got one other question for you, and then we'll start to wrap up a little bit here. Stranger Things, another 0 to 10. We've torn open a hole in the fabric of space-time, and an actual monster has come in. Demigorgon or Montauk monster, whatever you want to call it. Has that actually happened?
Yes. Look at CERN.
Are you at a 10 on this?
I'm a 10.
And do you think it's CERN in particular, or do you think that
CERN is
something could have
assisting
happened?
it.
Could it happen at Camp Hero?
It could have possibly, because that's what they talked about. They said that they let a monster. And I watched an interview. It wasn't just with Preston Nichols, because I literally think Preston Nichols was a perpetrator. He was an electrician by trade. Hello. And there was the other guy that was in, I can't remember his name right offhand. Do you remember the guy that was working with Preston Nichols? They both died.
I don't. I know it's not Peter Moon. That was just the co-author on some of the books. I can't remember the other
he
scientist.
Ghost wrote. But there was another individual too. And that individual, I believe, was the one that said that he brought in the manifestation, which the manifestations can come in through portals, and you can be a portal yourself.
Like a human being can be a portal?
Human beings are portals. That's why I've had people say these beings are coming in through my closet. Like, the little kids are like, Mom, there's a being in my closet. And you're like, no, there isn't. Listen to the little kids. But I've had adults come to me and say, it's followed me wherever I am. I said, because you're the portal. Because we're frequencies. So you're generating some kind of a frequency. So no matter where you go, there you are. You are the portal.
Would that just be a matter of changing your outlook and changing your frequency? Or is that would that require professional help?
Well, professional help, nobody's going to help you. So you better, if you go to professionals, these professionals deny that MK Ultra exists. They deny that there's satanic ritual abuse going on. They deny that people are being held as sex trafficking victims. If you go in and you say any of these things to an MK Ultra doctor that's working on behalf of the elite and the cabal, they will simply drug you and throw you in a crazy house and chain you to a bed until you comply and say, no, that never happened. I'm good now. Thanks for all the drugs that you're drugging me out with. So yes, these things are real. They're not fabrications. And I believe that it is a frequency thing. But then again, we also have interdimensional beings, which has lived in and amongst us since we resided on this earth. So some are, and then there's also the alien faction. Can they get in through portals? Because we know that the demonic entities can inhabit a human being. So, it's a complex question, because I say there is no one answer. Okay. When people say, is it A, is it B, is it C, is it D? I say, it's E. It's all of the above.
It's a little terrifying, to be honest, that there's so much of these different topics out there and little interest, but that when you dig, like MK Ultra in particular, it's legit, it's real. They were really trying this, and even if people don't believe what the reports were, the people doing the experiments believed that that's what the intent was.
Yes, it
So
was an occultist endeavor, a Nazi occultist endeavor that came to fruition, came to light. However, if people don't believe in MK Ultra, let me just put it on a very peripheral basis. Okay, it has many meanings, like A, B, C, D, E, right? MK Ultra is M for mind control with a K. It also means manufactured killers utilizing lethal tradecraft requiring assassinations. But in its broadest spectrum, it means mind control, which is the currency of every single government. And you are being constantly mind controlled through music, through television, through the Mockingbird media, through book publications, through a false history. He who controls the narrative controls the world.
very well said, Penny. I would love to have you back on. I'd love to go on to your show and talk about this more. We're leaving a lot on the table. I mean, there was a lot of topics that came up that each could have gone into their own hour-long sort of tangent, and I would love to do some of those with you if you're ever open to it.
Oh, most assuredly. And I thank you for your patience, because I did not call you. And that's just not like me. I usually am right on top of everything.
You're a pleasure. I could just tell from when we were talking, you're very genuine about this. So I was looking forward to this. No apologies needed. Thank you so much for coming on. And for one last time, just let people know where to find you, what times your show is, and the best way to get at you.
Yeah. So if you, we are a daytime show. So if you're a whistleblower, or if you're an investigative journalist, or if you are, we're looking all over the world. So we're looking for people in Israel, in Italy, in Germany, in Russia, anybody that has something to say or disclosure. You can always text my phone. I'm the executive producer of the Awake Nation. We are on Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern. And you can text my phone. It's 619-779-9771. And you must say who you are, because I will not answer unless you're in my contacts. But feel free to text me with any information that you can even text me anonymously and say, look, I'd like you to look into this, or this is a breaking story. I also take texts while I'm on the air. So, feel free to text me. Don't worry about texting me at 3 a.m, because my phone's on silent, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. So please go to the Awake Nation at awakenation.tv. We just started an after hours news program on YouTube, which is at the Awake Nation. We're also on Rumble under the David Zublik channel. And I am on Twitter at my Twitter name, believe it or not, is Shepard Out, because apparently I think I was in and now I'm out. So at the end of our show, David Zublik says, well, we're out of time, so I'm out of here. Zublik out. And I say Shepard Out, because Shepard Out is where you can find me on Twitter. And you can DM me, because my DM is open. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to be on paranoidamerican.com. And I reiterate, if it's actually happening to you, you're not actually paranoid.
I agree wholeheartedly. And let's just do it for fun. Paranoid American out.
Shepard out.